Venezuela, turning this suburb west of Miami into one of the largest Venezuelan diaspora communities in the United States. But beneath the calm surface lies growing anxiety for thousands of exiled Venezuelans. Their stay in the US, once a story of refuge and rebuilding, is turning into a new chapter of uncertainty. Jose Mendez sits on a park bench just off Northwest 87th Avenue. He used to be a city auditor in Maracaibo, Venezuela's second largest city, until 2022, when he says the government of Nicolas Maduro forced him into exile. Like many others, he fled political persecution and economic collapse, seeking stability and safety across the Caribbean. Now he lives in a small apartment with 2 roommates, works part-time in accounting, and sends money home to his elderly mother. But all that could soon end. His US temporary protected status, a humanitarian safeguard meant to protect nationals of crisis-stricken countries, expires in November 2025, and so far no extension has been guaranteed. The US Department of Homeland Security announced that the 2021 TPS designation for Venezuela would terminate on the 10th of September 2025, affecting more than 500,000 people. For Mendez, this means the possibility of deportation and a return to the country he risked everything to escape. I truly want him to be overthrown, he says, referring to President Maduro. I'll say it even if it hurts me later, if I'm sent back. His voice cracks slightly, torn between fear and defiance. The idea of being forced back to Venezuela, where opposition figures are routinely arrested, feels unbearable. Every day, I check the news to see if they will extend TPS, but the more I wait, the less hope I have, he says quietly. The Biden administration initially expanded protections for Venezuelans, citing humanitarian need. But the Trump administration, which returned to power in early 2025, has taken a sharply different approach, ending the prior designations and ordering stepped-up deportations. Trump described the old TPS framework as an unwanted remnant of Biden's open border policies. The new policy affects hundreds of thousands who arrived legally and registered through official programs. Mendez says he's already seen signs of change. I'm seeing the same thing happen here. I thought US officials would be more professional and less violent. He describes early morning raids by immigration agents in nearby neighborhoods, images of migrants handcuffed on sidewalks, and the fear that anyone with an expired permit could be next. I left Venezuela because I was tired of seeing people arrested for nothing. Now I see raids here too, he says. Civil rights lawyers have warned that Venezuelans with still valid documents are being detained illegally. Advocacy groups like the American Immigration Council report that many TPS holders were apprehended without cause or notice. Doral's economy has been transformed by Venezuelan entrepreneurship. From arepa shops to logistics firms, more than 1,000 small businesses in the city are owned by Venezuelan immigrants. Yet now, many of those enterprises face a worker shortage as TPS expiration looms. At a restaurant near Doral Central Park, Wilmer, a 43-year-old restaurant owner, polishes a countertop while glancing at his payroll sheets. He says about 1/5 of his employees rely on TPS to work legally. He voted for Donald Trump last November, attracted by the promise of economic growth and stronger foreign policy against the Maduro regime. But today, he feels betrayed. No, I don't think so, because he's not keeping the word he say he will do it. He never say he will take the TPS down. He shakes his head, frustration visible in every gesture. The policy change, he says, threatens livelihoods both for migrants and for the small businesses that depend on them. They're playing with us, he mutters. If they send my cooks back, I can't run this place. Across Doral, for rent signs are multiplying. Apartment vacancy rates have quietly climbed since the summer, with landlords reporting sudden tenant departures. Some Venezuelans anticipating deportation have left for Europe, particularly Spain and Italy, where they can claim heritage or seek asylum under EU rules. Meanwhile, the US has intensified pressure on Nicolas Maduro's government. In October 2025, the Trump administration ordered naval and air operations in the Caribbean, authorizing strikes on boats suspected of drug trafficking linked to Venezuela. The move described by officials as a regional anti-narcotics initiative, has been interpreted by analysts as part of a broader strategy to weaken Maduro's hold on power. The administration has also confirmed it is funding covert support operations for opposition groups within Venezuela, efforts that officials claim are designed to restore democracy. At a rally in Miami, a senior advisor to the White House said the U.S. will not rest until Venezuela is free again. The line drew applause from Cuban and Venezuelan exiles, many of whom view Trump's hardline approach as necessary to force change in Caracas. Yet that same policy is unsettling Venezuelan migrants in the U.S., who fear that geopolitical confrontation might come at their personal expense. Inside Doral City Hall, Councilman Rafael Pinheiro himself, a Venezuelan and a Republican, stands in a delicate position. He supports stronger U.S. pressure on Maduro, but disagrees with the decision to end TPS. It's hard to see good people having to leave the country, he says. These are teachers, nurses, small business owners, people who contribute to our community every day. They are not criminals. Pinheiro argues that Venezuelan migrants revitalized parts of Doral's economy and gave the city its distinctive identity. If you remove them, he says, you don't just lose workers, you lose the soul of the city. Local officials have appealed to Washington for an extension of TPS until Venezuela holds credible elections. But so far, the White House has not signaled flexibility. For many Venezuelans, the emotional burden is immense. Families live in a suspended state, unable to return home, but unsure if they can remain. Children born in the U.S. are citizens. Their parents are not. Couples face the possibility of separation. Immigration attorney Carla Reyes says her office has seen a surge in panic calls. We're advising clients to prepare backup plans to explore asylum or family-based petitions, but there's only so much the law allows. She notes that the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela remains dire. Electricity shortages, inflation, political repression, nothing has improved. Deporting people to that environment is unconscionable. At Miami International Airport, the line for flights to Madrid and Bogota has grown noticeably longer. Airlines report a rise in one-way tickets purchased by Venezuelans with soon-to-expire documents. Some describe it as self-deportation, leaving voluntarily before being forced out. The Venezuelan exodus remains one of the largest migration crises in modern history. More than 7.7 million people have fled the country since 2015, according to the UN Refugee Agency. Colombia, Peru, Chile, and the US host the largest communities abroad. In South Florida alone, the Venezuelan population has nearly doubled in 5 years, reshaping the region's politics and economy. Doral schools now teach bilingual curriculums, while supermarkets import Venezuelan brands of cheese, corn flour, and coffee to meet demand. But as integration deepens, fear is spreading that deportations could reverse years of progress. People built lives here, says sociologist Eduardo Linares of Florida International University. They pay taxes, buy homes, volunteer in schools. Removing them isn't just cruel, it's economically irrational. Back in Venezuela, the Maduro government continues to claim legitimacy. State media portray returning exiles as repatriated patriots, while opposition leaders call them forced returns. In Caracas, economic activity remains heavily dependent on oil revenue and limited foreign investment. Human rights organizations continue to document arbitrary detentions, censorship, and the criminalization of dissent. For those watching from Doral, it all feels painfully familiar. Mendy says he scrolls through Venezuelan news every night. Sometimes I see the faces of old colleagues who were arrested or disappeared, he says. I can't go back there, not yet. The TPS debate is now entangled in America's own political divide. Supporters of the policy's termination argue that TPS was never meant to be permanent and that extending it indefinitely encourages illegal immigration. Opponents counter that Venezuela's crisis remains unresolved and that ending protections now would expose people to persecution. Immigration policy analysts note that the Trump administration's move plays well with hardline voters who prioritize border control. In Florida, where Trump won 60% of Doral's vote, many residents support his stance on Maduro but disagree with deporting their neighbors. The contradiction reflects the complexity of the community's identity, fiercely anti-Maduro, yet deeply reliant on U.S. protections. Across Doral's cafes, conversations drift between nostalgia and worry. In one bakery, customers discuss the possibility of TPS Plus, a proposed new visa for migrants from politically unstable nations. Others speculate about a last-minute extension from Washington. Community organizations, churches, and legal aid groups are holding workshops to help migrants navigate upcoming deadlines. Flyers pinned to notice boards read in Spanish, "No te quedes sin estatus actua ahora." Don't be left without status, act now. Still, anxiety lingers. People don't sleep, says Pastor Luis Gomez of the Iglesia Nueva Esperanza. They ask me if God will touch the heart of the president to renew TPS. I tell them, have faith, but prepare. The White House maintains that ending TPS will restore order and fairness to immigration enforcement. Officials emphasize that humanitarian programs must not become pathways to permanent residence. Yet economists warn the move could have unintended consequences. A report by the Florida Chamber of Commerce estimates that deporting Venezuelan workers could cost the state $9 billion in GDP losses annually. Hospitality, construction, and health services would be hit hardest. Mayors across South Florida have quietly urged federal restraint. We need these workers, one city official said off record. They are part of our economic backbone. For Mendes, politics feels distant compared to the immediacy of survival. Each evening, he logs on to a local Venezuelan radio stream, listening for updates from Washington. He keeps his documents in a folder beside his bed: passport, TPS card, tax returns, and letters from his employer. He says if the deadline passes, he may drive to Texas to stay with a cousin while exploring legal options. Maybe it buys me time, he says, but time is all I have. When asked what he would do if Venezuela became democratic again, he smiles wistfully. Then I'd go home, he says. I'd rebuild the office where I used to work. I'd see my mother, walk by the lake, maybe teach again, but not under Maduro. In the end, Doral's story mirrors a broader struggle between the ideals of freedom and the realities of policy. Its residents fled authoritarianism only to encounter bureaucracy. They sought safety and found uncertainty. As one resident put it during a recent town hall meeting, we love America, but America is changing for us. And yet, amid frustration, there remains resilience. Community groups organize cultural festivals. Venezuelan restaurants donate food to shelters, and activists continue lobbying Congress for protection. We won't disappear quietly, says Wilma, the restaurant owner. We built a life here. We deserve to stay. The coming months will be decisive. Unless federal authorities extend or redesignate TPS for Venezuela, hundreds of thousands could lose legal protection by September 2025. Deportations would likely follow, though the logistical capacity to remove such numbers remains unclear. Meanwhile, US naval activity continues in the Caribbean, signaling ongoing confrontation with Maduro's regime. The mix of domestic immigration enforcement and foreign intervention creates a volatile policy landscape, one where individual lives hang in the balance. For many in Doral, the dream of safety has turned into a waiting game. Every policy announcement from Washington triggers new waves of fear and hope. Still, Mendes insists he has not lost faith in democracy, in fairness, or in the possibility of home. We left everything behind because we believed in freedom, he says softly. All we ask is a chance to live without fear here or back home.